I'm back. And you didn't even know I'd gone anywhere.
Nope.
That's how seamless we are, how professional, how amazing we are. And if we were more professional, I wouldn't admit that we took last week off. But it worked out amazing. Like, we were going to do that interview that we did with It's Electric last week anyway. And so that was on the docket, but it enabled me to go camping. And while I was camping, I made a couple observations about EVs.
Hmm.
I don't want to get into that, but first I want to get into who I am and how you can help support me and you. You being Ed, not you being the listener, because the listener I'm asking for money from. I'm Phil Royle. I have been a automotive journalist and content creator for 20 plus years, doing a variety of stuff. Remember back in the good old import car days?
Oh yeah.
And we worked for Peterson slash EMAP slash Primedia slash 10 slash Motor Trend Group.
Yes.
And one of the things that I covered on my beat was hot import nights. Remember that? All you
Oh yeah.
people from the early 2000s, hot import nights is pretty awesome. Super Street's now they're back doing basically hot import nights. It was called Super Street at Night or something.
Oh.
And a Facebook ad popped up, and it's Super Street at Night with some pretty awesome looking cars, from back in the day, like old school
Hmm.
now, uh, in Compton.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, back to giving me money. TheWalkCar.com/store will find you at a location with a bunch of t-shirts, and you can help support us by purchasing one of those t-shirts. Ed is proudly displaying one now that I think is still for sale. It's with our old logo, which we may go back to, because one of the things I wanted to do with this is not get stuck on logos. I wanted to constantly change things up. And then that also means that you just buy multiple t-shirts. TheWalkCar.com/store. Ed, your turn.
Ed Sanchez, likewise 20 plus years in automotive content creation and moderation. Currently working as an automotive electronics industry analyst
And t-shirt model.
and t-shirt model for the walkcar.com/store. And co-founder and contributor to the Walkcar blog and podcast.
I was up in the mountains camping. It was about 6,700 feet. Actually, it turns out it's over 8,000 foot climb, but we camped at 6,700 feet. And my truck, not electric, I've mapped it out. I can't really get there in most electric trucks if I tried.
Yeah.
There's no charging halfway up that 8,000 foot climb. And boy, you would go through,
Burn a lot of kilowatts.
you burn a lot of kilowatts and not have any fast chargers when you're there. So you would then be running a generator. I don't know. It would be a while. Regardless, the number one car, there were a lot of tent campers there.
Mhm.
I am not obviously in a tent camper. I am in a travel trailer. There were a lot of tent campers there. It seems like more often than not, there were tent campers in this site. The number one type of vehicle at this campsite, minivan, which
Oh,
I
all right.
found a little odd, but it packs a lot of stuff. And there are a couple like teardrop trailers for people with cars. But the next most popular type of vehicle, I would have said, I didn't do a scientific study. I just walked around with the kids and rode our bicycles and whatnot. Teslas, a
Huh.
lot of Model Ys, and they're not camping in them, but they are coming to camp with their tent next to it,
Oh, okay.
but in a Tesla. I didn't see anybody with I saw a couple the tents that like run off the back of the vehicles. None of the Teslas were
Hmm.
doing that. There was some minivans, some BMWs that were doing things like that. But there were a lot of Teslas, surprising number of Teslas. I also saw an Ionic 5.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, are they doing the little adapter thing? That was like the vehicle
Oh
to
yeah.
load. Remember like that with a weird
The little
dongle that
coffee
like,
maker and hot plate or
yeah, they weren't doing that at all.
huh.
They just had their car there and then they were just tent camping. Because I was like, wow, that's cool. Like, are they going to show up all these Teslas with a vehicle to load ability? And no, there were no Rivians. There were no Cybertrucks. There were no F-150 Lightnings. There was none of that stuff there. It
Hmm.
was like, if you want to go camping, tent camping right now, you either want a minivan or a Model Y.
Huh. Go figure.
Yeah, I couple observations there, nothing much. Maybe one day I'll borrow a vehicle. The vehicle that I think could do it would be the Silverado EV. and
Well,
by proxy, the Hummer as well. But
it better with a 200 plus kilowatt hour battery.
yeah, and eventually Ram with their EV trucks that might anybody throwing massive batteries. But
Yeah.
I'd be curious to do it. I just don't want to find out that you can't as you're going up. I did see a Tesla broken down going up the hill,
Uh-oh.
a Model Y, and
You think they ran out of juice? What do you think the deal was?
I have no idea. There wasn't smoke, there was no fire, it wasn't dramatic, but he had the trunk and the hood popped,
Ooh.
and was on his phone. And then as further down the mountain I got, because I was leaving, further down the mountain I got, there was a flatbed truck coming up. I'm guessing for him. There were two broken down vehicles. One was a truck that was very similar to mine, pulling a trailer very similar to mine. So I wiped my brow and said, thank goodness that wasn't me. And the other one was this Tesla that quite possibly was a running out of charge. I mean, stuff breaks,
Yeah, it
vehicles.
does.
Like I've got a vehicle now and the traction control is coming off and on all weird and ABS is fluctuating weird. It's wheel speed sensors. So I'm going to be replacing those. That had happened on an EV too. Like he could have been having that and he just didn't know what was happening and it was cutting power. And so, you pull over, like you just don't know.
Yeah, stuff happens.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to stop and ask him. I don't care much.
I'll tell you what else happens is experimentation sometimes.
Where is this podcast going now?
We're getting a little
You just turned left here.
just turn left here. So I'm now please keep in mind this is not like Hollywood production quality, but on my personal YouTube channel, of which there are all of 3 videos now.
I noticed that. 2 of which have nothing to do with EVs.
2 of which have absolutely nothing to do with EVs.
So a bad ratio right now. But maybe that'll change.
I did a 30-minute snooze fest of me talking about EV charging cords and adapters.
How can that be boring, Ed?
I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, hey, if you're into it, I mean, you might find it absolutely riveting. But yeah, it's basically me going through, talking through all my myriad of adapters. Speaking of which, we have a shirt for that at thewalkcar.com/store. There's an adapter for that.
Yes.
And if you want to find out what it's all about, we'll include that link in the show notes. And also too, if you're listening and you would like us to maybe consider doing videos, let us know. Phil and I have talked about this, kind of batted it around, kind of like a kitten with a ball of yarn. Like, should we, shouldn't we?
Well, the problem, we know we should. And we do this podcast. A video version exists. We just don't release it.
Yeah.
So the problem is video quality, production value. We don't have a big budget for this. And I'm on the side of if we can't do it well, I don't know if we should do it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm wrong and it's content trumps quality per se on production value. I don't know. Which is kind of where you're going here is, what do people think?
Take a look. Like I said, it's literally was me one-handing my iPhone and talking into it and like grabbing cords and adapters. So that's essentially it.
And looking down at all these adapters going, how much money have I spent on this?
Yeah, exactly. So I have ideas for ways, some different directions we could go in the near term, just kind of to, make it just kind of almost kind of like a conversational forum, maybe do a live or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud right now. This is, like I said, I'm just trying it out.
Hello at thewalkcar.com is where you email us.
Yeah. So, let us know. Click on the link. It'll be in the show notes. If you like it, if you'd like us to do more. I'm thinking maybe would start out doing 1 a month in terms of videos. And then, we'll see where it goes from there. If it gets good traction, then who knows what the future holds.
Might hold 2 videos a month.
Whoa.
Yeah. Let's not go crazy.
I wonder
But
if it would hold a Fratsonic exhaust.
I really want to get my hands on one of these cars. So this is Dodge with its Daytona EV Charger. Is it Charger Daytona EV or is it the whatever the name of this thing is? And they what I've forgotten all of the information on this. It was what 100 decibel exhaust, 120
Or
decibel exhaust or
120,
something,
something ridiculous. Yeah.
which is like isn't 140 like your brain melts? And
Yeah.
this
Yeah. It's
thing's
about
loud.
as loud as a jet taking off, supposedly. So,
So they have Dodge has said we're actually doing this. And in fact, here's another video of it. So I guess they don't have much news about the vehicle, but they're teasing it on Instagram, driving through a tunnel. And it sounds like it shifts as well. Or was I wrong in that video? It,
maybe. I mean, when you say shifts, I'm on the video doing air quotes right now. It
yes,
shifts.
it shifts,
Yeah.
I think. What do we think of this?
Well, I mean, so I've come out, and granted, I have not driven or ridden in an Ionic 5N. So who knows, that could totally change my mind. I've kind of I've put my stake in the ground saying I'm against fake noise in all their forms. Um, let's say just let EVs be EVs. You know, they all kind of I don't know what you'd say they sound like. I mean, they sound like EVs. Just
You've got
kind
to
of a
have some fake noise. You gotta have some.
well,
No,
I mean,
you'll laugh.
according to the
You'll laugh.
government, they mandate it for safety reasons now.
When the Prius was new, I flew up to, because I do a lot, my day job is in motorsports. I flew up to Monterey and rented a Prius. And this was when they were fairly new. I mean, they've been out for a few years, but they were on the not the first gen Prius, not the what was that model?
What you thought it was
The
like a
Echo.
Yaris
No, they
or an
had the
Echo,
first year was like an Echo or whatever it was
Echo
called.
hybrid,
Yeah.
basically?
And then after that it became the Prius. So I rented one that was the second gen, I guess.
Yeah, the
I don't keep up
doorstop
with that.
wedge
Yeah.
looking one. Yeah.
And I drove from the airport, went to the track, and at the track at Monterey, you go in through the bottom, and for the pro races, I don't know if they still do it, but at the time they were doing like a security check. So you went through, and then they like just basically peered in the car, I think, to make sure, whatever, before you do the big climb up into Laguna Seca and then over to the racetrack. And I was there in the Prius, and it's hybrid, so it's not the engine's not running because you're slow speed. And one of the security guys walks in front of my car, doesn't even hear it, and I'm driving,
Hmm.
and I slam the brakes on. I probably came like within a foot of knocking him onto the hood because it's so silent.
Hmm.
And this is like your car. Your car is pre crazy
Noisemaker. Yeah.
noisemaker sounds. If you are driving at a fast rate, the my contention is EVs are at a regular like 45 mile an hour and up.
Hmm.
EVs are probably noisier than most cars because the road noise,
Hmm.
the tire
Tire noise. Yeah.
noise is actually greater. I don't have data to back that up. I go running a lot. And this is what I hear as I'm running is if I hear tire noise, unless it's a big truck, like a pickup truck with knobby
Hmm.
tires, chances are it's an EV.
Hmm.
And then when you get to like a Camry, those are pretty whisper quiet. You don't hear the engine. You hear
Yeah.
them when they're accelerating, but at
Hmm.
constant rate, you don't hear
Coasting.
the
Yeah.
engine at all.
Yeah.
Modified cars are different, Porsches, things like that, Subarus. You hear those. Where you want to hear the engine. Those are different. But generally, a Camry is going to be quieter than your Model 3.
Hmm.
When I'm running, I will hear the Model 3 first. But at slow speeds, sub 10 mile an hour, probably sub 20 miles an hour, you
Hmm.
can't hear an EV at all.
Yeah.
Case in point, at the campground, I would hear when I was sitting and a car would go by, I would hear the car ever so slightly. You could hear an engine as it's creeping by. At
Hmm.
one point, a Model 3 drove by and I had no idea. Like I saw it afterward. I was
Oh,
like,
you just saw the glow of the brake lights.
yeah, because they
You're like,
like,
oh.
yeah. And they're incredibly quiet at low speeds and dangerous. I agree with the government requiring noisemakers under, isn't it like 25, 35 miles an hour? And then they can
Something like
shut
that.
off.
Yeah.
I'm totally down with that. What I'm not sure I'm down with is 120 decibel Fratsonic exhaust that is going on the freeway when you're doing 70 and you got all this noise. I don't think that's necessary. So I'm with you up to a certain speed.
Uh-huh.
And then once you get down to like 25, whatever the number is, I don't know, then that and below, I think you need a noise.
Well, so does I think it's NHTSA or DOT or whoever. It's the noisemakers are mandated. When I bought mine, it was not still not officially a government mandated rule. So mine does not have a noisemaker. So I can creep up on people in parking lots and lay on the horn.
You could be a creeper.
I can be a creeper. Newer cars you cannot. So, but the reason I bring this up is when they had the first drives of the Ioniq 5N, what's it called? In grin mode or whatever.
Yeah.
And before journalists actually got a chance to actually drive it, the a lot of them were already kind of like, oh, this is gonna suck, it's stupid, and blah 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 blah. But a lot of them, once they drove it, they're like, no, this is actually cool. It actually gives you kind of visceral feedback. Because I guess, after decades of driving, our brains are conditioned around certain noises and sensations in terms of, especially with track driving, RPM, shift points, kind of, where it, I know it sounds kind of, because it's all fake, but what quote gear you should be in as you're approaching a corner, this and that. And a lot of them said, yeah.
It's difficult on the track to know how fast you're going when you don't have to shift. That works with, when I took a Hellcat to the track and it was an automatic, it's incredibly different when you're not manually shifting, even if it's paddles, because you don't have a reference for how fast you're going. You don't know, oh, I'm at the top of third, or, I'm mid fourth, or I'm in second. Like, you don't have that reference. You just have speed. It's a very different, it messes with your mind. It certainly does.
So are you maybe, so are you kind of splitting hairs here, saying, okay, I'm in favor of in grin mode, but I'm against Fratsonic exhaust? Or
I think
where
there's
do you fall
definitely
on
a happy medium. I think that you should have a button if you're going to do track days and stuff. If somebody puts a button in that pumps sound to the inside of the vehicle, not necessarily the outside, but the inside of the vehicle, so you can hear your speed, I think that would be a very useful tool. I know autocrossers who we've done tire testing with, and you autocross with a helmet on. We did tire testing, and one of the drivers didn't put a helmet on because it was a closed course and whatever. And he went out and he kept missing his turn-ins. And he put a helmet on because he was not used to the sound. The sound difference was throwing him off. He's a national caliber, multi-championship winning autocross driver. One of the best in the nation at the height of his time, which was when we were doing this. And the way the audio came into the helmet from hearing the tires and the engine and the delay of that, he could drive off of that. He took the helmet off and the sensation changed, and it changed the way he drove for the worse because he was used to with the helmet. So he put his helmet back on and boom, it was right back on it. I mean, he was still way faster than me and most people without the helmet, but he was not as in tune with it. The sound can make a huge difference. That said, it's just, I mean, you're talking about a transition period.
Yeah.
So, ask me again in 20 years. We're in a transition. It's like when we went to smartphones with Blackberries and they had the
buttons, the keyboard,
the buttons, and then you transition to an iPhone and people were like, you got to have a keyboard. Well, who says that anymore? It was a transition period. We all got used to it. So my answer is going to change on this, but right now, I think for track driving, you need the sound. For street driving, I don't think you do. It would be nice to have an option button. Slow speed, you need a sound for outside. High speed, you don't need a sound for outside. There's a lot of nuance in all of this.
I think you need to get an Ioniq 5N and test it out and give us a first person evaluation.
I did like the sounds of it at Pikes Peak. It was the best sounding EV of the bunch because the others had the sirens, whoop 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 whoop, as they went up the hill, and the 5N had the engine sound, which sounded
Yeah.
Awesome. So once again,
Did it do pops on overrev?
I don't know.
That would have been cool.
That's kind of their
Anyway,
thing.
so
Yeah. You want to move on to subject two?
yes, I would. So this is still tangentially related to Stellantis, as is the Charger Daytona, but not in the way you might think. So Toyota has just come out with their first EV cargo van.
I clicked this link when you put that in the show notes for me to, familiarize myself with.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've seen this before. I see this Toyota van. I've seen it. Can't put my finger on it.
And then you read a little more, and then you're like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they did some badge engineering on this.
Yeah. So Toyota's new EV van is basically a rebadged Fiat, or as we know it in North America, the Ram ProMaster. So yeah, I'm this, I don't want to badmouth Toyota too much. They do have the BZ4X, but this somewhat reinforces my notion that Toyota's a little half-hearted with their EV stuff. They kind of saw this, they're like, oh, someone else makes one, we can slap our badge on it. Cool. We'll just do that.
And we'll call it the Pro Ace.
Yes.
Or the Pros, because it's all one word. I guess it's
what
good.
it is.
Yeah, it's fine. On the Dodge, is the charging port on the side like it is with this? I kind of feel like these big vans, you need the charger on the nose or the trunk.
I'm actually not sure. I haven't paid a lot of attention because there is a ProMaster EV now. I'm not sure. I know in the Ford Transit EV, it's in the nose. It's actually, I think, hidden behind the little blue oval.
It's where the EV gods intended it for things like this.
Yeah.
For big delivery vans, you can't get fancy and put it down the side.
Yeah.
They're going to be too long, too big, too wide, too everything for that to be convenient. The EV chargers are never going to be on the side. They're always going to be at the front or the back. Like,
yeah,
those are your options. So I just looked it up, and it sure looks like it is on the exact same side. It just the ProMaster EV. It's on the driver's side or left side.
Pro Ace.
As the Pros. Yeah.
The Pros. Toyota Pros. Okay.
Yeah. So I maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that's good for commercial stuff. I mean, maybe there's a preference for commercial vans for a charger.
Well, I don't know if you remember the Lordstown Endurance that I had the chance to drive.
Yep.
Which I'm coming to find out is almost like the Fisker Ocean. It's like, this is rare chance. At the time I thought, oh, cool, whatever, and now it's like, I was probably one of a small handful of people, like non-engineers, that actually got a chance to drive it. I'm thinking,
yeah, you could have owned one. It went for auction. Oh, it didn't sell, but
oh well. Womp womp.
Yeah. Maybe you still could own it.
So continuing on the Fiat theme. So speaking of which, actually last week's episode, It's Electric. So they're kind of promoting this whole idea of bring your own cord charging. So basically charging posts alongside the street, and instead of having an attached cord, you attach your own cord to charge your vehicle. Well, Fiat's kind of flipping the script with this. The cord is attached to the vehicle. The cord actually extends from the vehicle to the charging post. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, I was going to ask your thoughts on it because I know the right answer. I'm going to see if you're right or wrong. Is this good or is this bad?
It's an interesting solution.
It's like a wound up cord. Yeah. In their photo, it's like if anybody.
Yeah, it's a little pigtail,
If you were raised in the 80s and you had the long, windy phone cord thing, you know what this looks like. Yeah, it's like that, but a 6-gauge wire or whatever it is for the EV cord.
Yeah.
So you don't really know.
I'm kind of neutral about it. I think I'm just kind of curious what decisions and rationale got them to that place. it's if you've heard the term you oh I know I'm going to botch the paraphrase, but you're so obsessed with you that you could do it, you didn't ask
Whether
whether
you
you
should.
should do it.
Yes.
I think it's kind of one of those deals where someone convinced management, oh yeah, let's try this, and they were like really passionate about it, and either manager was like, oh yeah, sure, go for it, or oh yeah, you know, I just I don't know.
Well,
I'm
when
kind of
they
neither here nor there about it. I
when the
don't know.
Fiat folks, when designing this grand Panda, said, we can, but should we? The answer is no, you shouldn't. I'll give you a definitive answer for that. Have you ever bought anything where it comes with a cable, like an inflatable mattress
Uh-huh.
or a tire inflator or anything where it comes with a 120-volt plug attached and then it goes into a little compartment? You open up the compartment and then you plug it into the wall. And when you're done, you wind it back up and it doesn't fit ever again. And you wind the cord around the thing or you just let it drape over. It never goes back. You get it back to my camping. Get a sleeping bag and it comes in a stuffed little bag and you go, "Oh great, this
Oh
thing is
yeah, I
so
know about
awesome."
that.
And then you go camping for the first time. You take it out. You get up the next morning. You wind the sleeping bag back up, and it will not go in the bag again. It never goes in the bag. So you throw the bag out. And I've got a camper, so I just wind the thing around and throw it in a cupboard, and I'm done. Like
And just take some bungee cords. Like,
I don't even do that at this point. I've given up. It just goes in a cupboard. I've got a cupboard dedicated to sleeping bags. This will be like that. This will never go back in. That cord, much like 80s telephone things, the little cords,
they'll get all
it'll stretch
tangled,
out.
weird, and
It'll
yeah.
stretch out and never go back to normal. This thing will be like draped funny. You won't know how to stick it back in. You'll see people where they've got this like thrown in their
Which looks
frunk.
like
Yeah, they'll throw it in
dangling.
their frunk and whatever because it's going to come out the nose of the car and then back in the frunk because it couldn't get it in, or they just jam the handle in and the cable's hanging out. It's a bad idea.
Okay, well,
That
wow.
said, I like the idea of a car being named the Grand Panda. So the home run on that, but
Not the attached cord
yeah, that's a
concept.
that's a bad idea. Go back to last week's It's Electric, far superior design that they have come up with, and it works with everything that's existing. Like here, what do? You pull up to one of the It's Electric chargers with this, and what do you like? Well, I guess you just plug that. No, because it's a different plug on the It's Electric one. So now you've got this, and then you plug it into another connector, and then you plug it into another connector. So now
No,
it doesn't even work with what's used throughout Europe.
no, actually, technically it would, because Europe uses CCS2, and so the host side of the It's Electric concept is CCS2. So hypothetically, it would work. Now, I guess my question is if, depending on it's the male or female side, if those would connect. But yeah, so this actually might work with that, strangely enough.
Regardless, I don't like it.
Anyway, well, I guess the Saudis like Lucid, despite losing, what is it, $130,000 per vehicle. They just gave him another $1.5 billion, I guess.
I'm okay. Lucid needs to succeed. And apparently the Saudis, for whatever reason, with the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, isn't that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah.
That they believe the same thing. And this has got to succeed. I don't know if they look at this as a Tesla killer or if they look at this as diversifying, which is what they do with the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. They're very,
Hmm.
like they've got Bitcoin, they've got all sorts of things. They diversify.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they just look at that and they've got so much money that you can just throw another billion at something. But that's a lot of money.
Hmm.
And
So, but you could say they're kind of earning it a little because I guess their Q2 revenue exceeded analyst expectations. So there's that. Um,
so the revenue's up, but they still lost money.
Still lost money. And also too, the way this is structured, I guess, is it's kind of half convertible notes and half credit line. So it's 750 million, 750 million. But regardless, they said this should give them runway for basically another year. I guess long enough to now.
Wow. Wow.
Um,
How do I get signed up for this? The
yeah.
problem is that I have with this is who it's coming from. And I know the Saudis invest in a lot of companies, but eventually you don't want to be the one holding the bag when you are multi-billion dollars in debt, indebted to certain people. That's where my concern comes from. And Peter Rawlinson is the one holding the bag.
Um, yeah, I'm going to get slightly off track about this, but
We don't do that here.
no, never.
We're on the rails all times.
So I don't know if you heard of or remember SunPower.
Uh-huh.
They made really from an efficiency standpoint, objectively the best solar panels on the market. Okay. So their technology, they were the technology leader for solar panels for probably the better part of a decade. Well, they just declared bankruptcy. So again, I'm not trying to rain on Lucid's parade, but just the point being that engineering excellence does not always equal marketplace success. And Lucid, I think, is with the Air Pure, currently the most efficient EV on the market, which is especially impressive considering it's like a 5,000-pound full-size sedan. So it's actually
0 to
more
60 in like 3 seconds.
yeah, and it's more efficient than my Model 3. So they certainly have the technology.
They are number one when it comes to EV efficiency. I don't think there's any
Yeah,
doubt on that.
no. So, but again, it gets back to how can they basically scale and monetize and start making a profit. I mean, that's ultimately what has to happen.
Well, how they do it is they get deals like the Genesis deal, and weren't they in talks with Aston Martin
Oh, Aston Martin and Genesis, yeah,
to move their technology?
yeah. I'll tell you,
I
according to
really
Peter,
want them to succeed, but man, I view that as their future. I think they will succeed, but they will succeed in a way that we are not seeing right now.
so technology licensing, you think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
still your hypothesis?
yeah. I don't think they've got a future in what they're doing, which bums me out because I would
Yeah.
love to see Tesla and Lucid as like the two juggernauts.
Hmm.
I think that would be a great battle to see. That would be the Ford and GM. You'd have Tesla and Lucid, and I don't know how Lucid gets
Well,
there.
we'll see. We'll see how well the Gravity does, if that exceeds expectations. But again, I mean, starting at 80 grand, not exactly affordable. But anyway, I'll tell you how Lucid is not going to do it is by making a low cost full size pickup.
Which ironically takes us full circle to what I said at the beginning of this. Is Peter Rawlinson and I are like seeing eye to eye on this. That it's just what's the quote that you got there? It is not possible with today's technology to make an affordable pickup without an internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
And
So base.
and that's so we didn't want to get into this, but Tucker Carlson has released a video where he's reviewing the Cybertruck. And I have not watched it, admittedly, and I'm not a Tucker Carlson fan. And it is not necessarily, well, a lot of it is because he's slimy. I'll just say.
How do you
But
really feel?
and this video is part and parcel of that. He comes in and the video is called like Cybertruck review. And in the first like 30 seconds, he basically says, I'm not going to even give this Cybertruck a shot. I don't like it. And he's on the farm like next to a 1950s Ford, and he's trying to be Mr.
Oh,
Americana.
he's throwing
and
FUD left and right just from the get go. He's
and
like, oh,
it's I got 30 seconds in and I am like, I'm done. This is him being everything that I don't like about him. But you can't have a pickup truck that's an EV that does pickup truck stuff. The flip side of that is what Tucker Carlson would want to use an EV pickup truck for. Be great. He should go and buy a Cybertruck or a Lightning.
what? Because he's an air hauler.
Because yes, he goes, there's no way he's going up 8,000 feet with his travel trailer doing this himself like I do. It's just no way.
No,
What he's using a pickup truck for is at worst, he's putting mulch in the back of it. Like that's
if that.
if that. I doubt that he's even doing that. He's using it as I'm an American, so I'm going to show off with my big gas guzzling vehicle. That's what he would have a pickup truck for,
Yeah,
is
that's
to
his whole
prove
shtick.
his point.
Well, I mean, also to prove the point, like you said, I so this whole price creep thing. I mean, this first happened with the F-150. Well, first the Cybertruck that was promised at starting under $40,000, came to market for what, 69,000 or something. I can't
And
remember.
I know multiple people that have canceled their Cybertruck reservations based
Yeah.
on the price.
Yeah.
So
So
the
there was-
range was a problem. They didn't like the range. They didn't like the tow capacity. But the number one thing that they canceled for
Price.
was the
Yeah.
price.
Yeah. So then following that up with the F-150 Lightning, which I think they really tried to bring it to market for a low price. They were losing their shirts, so they had to raise the price on that. Case in point, arguably the only effective full-size EV truck currently, the Silverado EV, 200 plus kilowatt hour battery. I think that starts close to 70,000, and that's for like a work truck trim. That's like vinyl floor mats, vinyl seats,
Refrigerator
bare bones.
white.
Yeah, refrigerator white.
Which, over the weekend, I drove by a Chevy dealership,
Mhm.
randomly going somewhere else, and there was one for sale on the lot.
Yeah.
So those things are not selling like hotcakes. There was one there you could walk in and buy. It was front, like not even on the display stand. It was like just parked in the row of vehicles. And I was like, what? Like, they're not selling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, I think I gotta side with you and Rawlinson on this. I mean, I would probably not buy an EV truck now.
To do truck things. I think if you
to do truck stuff now.
if you are getting it to just family haul, throw your bicycles in the back, throw your surfboard in the back, I think they're great.
Yeah.
Like I would have a Rivian. I surf. If I just surfed and I was buying an EV truck, I'd probably buy the Rivian.
Yeah.
Buy an R1T, and I would be as happy as a clam. That thing would do everything that I need. Include take $1,000 a month of payments because it's $90,000.
Basically mortgage payment. Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from that, aside from me being dirt poor and not being able to do that anyway, they're great. But it's as soon as you want them to do truck things. And in my mind, you buy a truck to do truck things.
Yeah.
Because I can fit my surfboard in my Kia, and I do.
Yeah. No, I think for the time being, either hybrid or plug-in hybrid trucks, I think that's the way to go.
Until there's some big breakthrough, like
in battery technology.
Hydrogen.
Oh, there you go,
We'll
Phil.
go there. But solid state, even though I listened to some science podcast, something or other, and they were talking about the chemistry of solid state and why it won't work or why it doesn't work right now for automotive stuff. And there's like recharge cycles and all this stuff. There's man, I'm a big fan of the solid state. That's where I think Toyota's putting a lot of their money into, and I think that could be the big breakthrough that they have eventually, and that bumps them up in the EV world, and we're all going to go, wow. Now I don't know. I almost put it as like almost like a pipe dream, like hydrogen. That's
Maybe
it was like I'll try and find the thing. It was like some nerdy science deep dive into solid state batteries, not just EV batteries, but just in general solid state batteries. And there was the number of charge cycles that you can do before they give up,
degrade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether they can overcome that. And it was
it's
downer for me because I went into it going, oh, this is going to be great fodder for the podcast. And at the end, I'm like a bumming. I'm like, God, now I feel like Ed and hydrogen technology.
Well, I'll tell you what other type of vehicle, I guess, batteries are not exactly well suited for are sports cars, at least according to Lotus. So this is a report from Autocar. So they were planning, Lotus does have two EVs on the market right now, the Elettre, and then I'm trying to think of the other one, the sedan. I can't remember.
Avaya. There's the Avaya. No, there's
Evija.
the
Elettra is the
no.
SUV. I
Yeah,
guess Evija is the
a-
sedan, right?
I don't think that's right. I think the Avaya is the supercar.
It's a supercar, but there's also a sedan and an SUV. Anyway,
Yes.
so with those kind of cars, you don't really care too much. I mean, SUVs, even I think even the new BMW X5 is like 6,000 pounds, but so you don't really care if it's. But I guess they were planning like a lightweight, ultra high performance car, and they just came.
Amaya.
Maya, that's right.
Amaya is the sedan.
Okay,
Avaya is the supercar. Elettre is the SUV.
okay. So this would be, and this is what is incredibly ironic to me is the original Tesla Roadster was effectively a converted Lotus Elise, I think.
Yep.
And so basically they were going to essentially reintroduce the Elise as an EV, but they determined with the current battery technology, it could not meet, I guess, their weight and efficiency targets. So they just said, you know what, we're gonna push this off a few more years to continue to refine this. Hopefully technology improves, but they just said no, it's not ready for prime time yet.
Now, I don't know that much about the original Tesla Roadster,
Mm-hmm.
but I just did some Googling and it
Mm-hmm.
looked like it had about a 240-mile range out of a 50 to 60 kilowatt hour battery.
Mm-hmm.
So, about the size battery that your car has
Mm-hmm.
and about the range that your car has.
Mm-hmm.
And its
How much did it
weight,
weigh?
that's
Yeah.
what I am now looking up, is its weight was around 2,700 pounds.
The Tesla Roadster?
According to what I'm finding on the Wikipedias, it was 2690.
That 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 can't be right. I really have a hard time believing that. The Elise, maybe. The Tesla Roadster, I want to say at a minimum it was like 3,500 pounds.
Now, the Lotus Elise was sub 2,000 pounds,
Oh, okay. I guess in that context
or
it's
about
believable.
2,000, depending on the
Okay,
generation. Whatever.
okay.
So,
So the
if those
Tesla added
numbers,
what, like 700, 800
700
pounds?
pounds, yeah,
Okay. But
which now
sub
makes it elite.
3,000 is still pretty impressive, I
Yes,
think.
if they could get it down to 2,400,
Hmm.
I think it's game on. I think 2,400, that was 24 to 2,500 was where the Miata began to lose its soul. 2,200 was a sweet spot.
Well, but I mean, going from, I mean, here I am going off the rails again. Going from NC to ND, they kind of, some would say they kind of rectified the sin of
They did.
the
So NA and
NC getting a
NB,
little fat.
yeah,
So they're like,
NA and
okay,
NB, they went about 2,200 pounds. And C went up to like 2,500 and maybe even
I
2,600.
think I want to
I
say
don't
like
remember.
26, but yeah.
And it was not popular. The NC kind of fell flat. It had 200 horsepower, had more power than any other Miata before that. It was mechanically superior. And
Hmm.
now in the motorsports world, it's really like it came back. It's taken time. It had to hit the used market before people were willing to buy them and cut them up and start, doing some serious stuff. But the other ones, people were racing immediately because they were fun immediately. And they released the ND, and that's what happened with the ND. They went back to 22 to 2,300 pounds, and it suddenly got its groove back.
Hmm.
And so there's something about that sweet spot, 22, 2,300 pounds versus 25 to 2,600, where it isn't as fun.
Yeah.
And they do feel different. I've raced all of them. They
Hmm.
do. I've run NAs, NBs, NCs, and NDs on the track.
Hmm.
And there is a difference. You can feel it.
Hmm.
And those are in race trim, so they weighed a little bit less, whatever, but
Hmm.
the delta was still the
Hmm.
same.
Hmm.
So I think if Lotus is coming in going 2,000 pound car and now it's got to weigh 2,700, I get it. I think they're right. But if they could get that down to 2,400, I think they're right on that bubble. I think they could have a fun car with
So
240-mile range. And I've autocrossed that. I haven't autocrossed I've autocrossed two EVs,
Mhm.
but one of them was a Mustang conversion,
Oh,
and
yeah, the AEM. Yeah.
that had a very unique weight distribution versus a standard ICE vehicle, especially going in a
Mhm.
Mustang. And then you go over to you're used to how the Mustang ICE vehicle performs. Then you
Mhm.
go to the EV, the weight distribution is very different, and it was not dialed in.
Mhm.
Lotus would dial that in, and it would be amazing. So I
Hmm.
think they could do something with 2,400 pounds.
So, so you're thinking they were justified and kind of like, let's hold off on this until we could refine it a little more.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if they came out with this and it was 2,700 pounds, which it probably wouldn't be because times have changed. Cars
Hmm.
get heavier because of safety requirements, because of impact testing, because of all of these. Now cars have to have. I don't know about in Europe, but like they've all got to have reverse cameras on them now. They've all got to have
Hmm.
this. There's all these safety features that originally were
Hmm.
on Mercedes and BMWs and now are
Hmm. They're
required.
mandated for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of that takes weight. And it may not be much, but back to the Miata, they were so proud on, I think it was the ND, they shaved like
Hmm.
90 grams off the rearview mirror, whatever the number was, that this is what it takes to get the weight down.
Hmm.
And in the amount of time from the original release to now, there are so many more requirements
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to shave that weight down, there's a lot. Now, wiring systems have changed as well. Now it's like
Hmm.
the whole thing talks to each other. It's not like individual wires per se. You can, it's more of a smart system. Like on my Yukon, I plug in one thing and it communicates with like the taillights and it knows what's going on.
Yeah. CAN bus. Yeah.
Yeah. So that will simplify things as well. So there's a give and a take, but I think there's been more take than give when it comes to weight.
Hmm.
They've I think in general they're heavier at this point.
Yeah.
So
So you think Lotus is made good for 5,000 plus pound sedans and SUVs
I think
by
they're
saying we're going to wait until we can do this right?
yeah, I think they need to do it right or
Don't do it.
well, man, I mean it's hard because if Lotus doesn't if they just say, well, we're not going to do it until we can do it right, well, Lotus may not exist
Well,
eventually. I mean, they're owned by Chinese companies, so there's deeper
yeah.
pockets than there was before. But eventually, what's a brand? I mean, maybe it just turns into a luxury sports sedan
Well, okay,
SUV
not
brand.
not to keep going on this for ad infinitum, but Porsche Porsche Cayenne when it first came out, the purists were outraged. They're like, "Oh my, I can't believe it's the end of the world. Porsche's making an SUV." Well, the Cayenne allowed future generations of the 911, the Boxster, so forth. So maybe the Maya, the Elettre is doing the same thing in a sense.
I think, sort of, yeah. I think more for Lotus, it's buying time. They're
Yeah.
known for the sports cars, so they don't. I think the other stuff justifies their existence at this point, and then eventually they can get into. I don't know. I really don't know. Lotus's business is very different from how it was 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. At this point, it might just be the brand name. That might have been all it's been purchased for. It used to be for like suspension development,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that was
Engineering. Yeah.
and basically what we're arguing Lucid should essentially become. That was kind of Lotus's shtick was
Hmm.
that they were the development excellence for performance. Maybe at this point they've just been bought and sold so many times because long gone are the days like they haven't been Lotus for decades.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the name at this point. And I gotta say, if I were gonna buy a luxury SUV and price was no object, I'd be up there with the Lotus. I'd
Getting
buy one of
Elettre.
those. Yeah, I'd style that.
Nice.
Just I like the name.
Well, hopefully if you bought one, it wouldn't catch on fire.
We
So,
got to go through this one quick. There,
and
feel
you said I ran this by you, and there's oh, this is nothing new.
well, it's not. So there's an article on the Autopian, link in the show notes, of how do you put out electric car fire? Put a blanket on it. And so Ed brought this up, and I'm like, this has got to be at least 4 years old. Because in the motorsports world, this is what we've known about. Now, the application of it is something else. You know, you might
Hmm.
not have a fire department that necessarily has got one, but there's different ways that you can put out fires. And that's in my day job. one of the many things that we've been talking about. There's the injection into the battery packs that you can do to like freeze out the battery pack. I forget exactly what it is, but you like inject it into the battery pack structure. But there's also putting a blanket on it.
Hmm.
There's a variety of different ways to put out electric fires. And this one is it's kind of neat because it's something that you can have available for
Mhm.
like where this has a major advantage is for parking structures, things like that, is you could
Mhm.
have an emergency kit. And essentially, you see your car smoking, you could go and grab the blanket, or the attendant could,
Yeah.
and smother this thing, and it doesn't burn down a whole apartment complex or whatever it is. So it's just, it could be right next to the defibrillators and stuff that everybody carries.
EV blanket.
Yeah, it really could. They're not very, I mean, they're big and bulky, but they're not that big and bulky.
Yeah.
So something to look forward to, I guess, is, the advantage of the blanket is it doesn't take up like right now you just pour water on these things until the fire goes out, and that could be,
Massive and massive and massive amounts.
yeah, it could be hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water, and then the fire could just come back up because it generates its own oxygen. It's
Yeah.
a perpetual fire machine at that
Yeah.
point. And we've even seen it where there was an EV that was dropping jet skis in a lake or something, wasn't it? And then it ended up getting sucked down into the water, as many vehicles do when they're at these boat ramps, because
Mhm.
they don't know what they're doing. And the thing ignited, and it's in the water, sinking, on fire. Like the smoke is coming up through the water. It's craziness
Oh, geez.
because the water doesn't extinguish it. It's an
That's
electrical
scary.
fire, so it's not a grease fire.
Uh,
It's totally different. All right, we're way over. I wanted this episode to be 20 minutes shorter than it is. So we will end with buy a t-shirt, but we've already told you enough about that. thewalkcar.com/store. We've also told you that everything is available in the show notes, which are embedded into the podcast. They're also on thewalkcar.com. Email us if you want video content or whatever it is. If you got ideas for that, hey, if you want to work for free, hello at thewalkcar.com. And big companies like, if the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund wants to advertise on our podcast, thewalkcar.com/advertise. We'll cut you a deal. I mean, you're given, what was that, $1.5 billion
1.5
to
billion.
Lucid? I mean, I'll do it for half that. And I will give you an ad for an episode. That'd be great. And I'll deliver on what I promise. That's all I got.
Yeah. We may have some special guests coming up. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I really like the episodes that we do have special guests. I like this chitter chatting, but I also
Yeah.
like the special guests. So I think we got a good mix going there. And the last couple weeks to do the back-to-back charging ones that we did
Yeah.
was, I think, fascinating to get two opposite sides that aren't even competing. There are
No.
two sides of the equation that work in harmony, and that is what's amazing about EVs is that when you get to that nerdy element like
Mhm.
that it's pretty
And
incredible.
we've just made contact with another player that's catering to an altogether different segment of the charging infrastructure that hopefully something will come of that. And I'll just leave that teaser dangling out there. So until next time.
Excellent. Excellent. As Mr. Burns would say. Talk to you next week.
All right.